Welcome home, everyone. Thank you for joining in on this episode of Welcome Home with the Katinas. Welcome Home is a podcast where I, your host Josh, sit down for a conversation with different people who I admire and discuss whatever's on their mind, and especially focus on life at home in times like this. Wherever you are and however you're listening, thank you for your support, and once again, welcome home. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining in on this week's episode of Welcome Home with the Katinas. I'd like to wish a happy March to everyone out there listening. I think last episode I said that there would be one more episode in February, but I was not taking into account that February is a short month. So I'm here today, March 1st, recording this, and the year is flying by. I've just been spending some time reflecting on the first 2 months of the year, and it has been a whirlwind. It has gone by really quick, and a lot has happened. But I'm thankful that every week I get to sit down with you guys here listening, and especially sit down with my guests, sit down and talk with them and catch up with people who I really care about and people who I really look up to. And today is definitely one of those days. Before I get to talking with my guest, I'd like to thank everyone who is a partner of the show and a partner with the Katinas ministry. I say this every week, but we couldn't do this if it weren't for people like you. So thank you so much for your generosity. I hope you know that your partnership is valued, and I look forward to working with all of you guys in the future. If you want to become a partner with the Katinas and a partner of the show, the best way to do that is to visit thekatinas.com. Go there and you'll find a give button. Click on that, and it'll take you to where you need to go. So thank you in advance for doing that. Okay, today I have a returning guest, someone who is a huge part of my life, someone I love having here in the studio. And I'd like to welcome him, my Uncle Yetzi Katina. Uncle, thank you for being here.
Absolutely, Josh. I think this is 3 or 4, but I love the podcast, man. And man, you're doing an amazing job, and so just glad to be here.
Thanks, Uncle. Yeah. It's funny how I've been doing the show for a year and a half now, and I've had several guests on multiple times, but every time it seems like there's always something new to talk about.
Absolutely.
And I always love it. The show has kind of given me an excuse to stay in touch with the people who are really close to me. So I enjoy especially having you and the uncles here in the studio. So thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. And you see, I wore my West Main T-shirt for all those who are viewing on YouTube. But West Main that's Josh's his efforts, man. West Main, Sunny Days was your first.
Not many people know about that name.
Yeah. Not a lot of people.
Yeah.
A lot of high schoolers from the past know about that.
Yes.
Yeah. But West Main, and I want to support them whenever I can.
Thank you, Uncle.
One thing that your dad and the other uncles and I talk about is that, man, we envision our kids not just doing greater things, but or not just doing great things, but greater things than us, than the generation before you all, and I just feel like that should be the goal of every generation, So,
well, thanks for supporting, Uncle.
Absolutely.
That means a lot to me. Well, you've been on the show, so you know how this goes. I have a question for you to start off our conversation, and this question is intentionally open-ended, so you can answer it however you'd like to lead our conversation. But your question is this: what's going on at home?
I love that question. Home is good, man. Auntie Kathy's doing good. You know, let's see, we're really enjoying this our community group, and we're going into our third year of being with this group, which consists of about 10 couples. And it's what's amazing, Josh, is that we really see how trust grows in time. You know, I remember when we first got together with the group, you know, it was just everybody introducing themselves. But, you know, after 3 years of being together, everybody has shared life, you know, shared situations that they're going through. And so we're really enjoying that, you know, especially at this point of our lives. And friendships are really important, you know. And Caitlin and Javon were here the other day for Eli and Amelia's baby shower. You know, they're doing good. And Callie and Courtney are doing well. You know,
Good.
Yeah, they're doing good. I was Auntie and I were at Cameron and Caleb's basketball game last night.
Oh, nice.
You know, so Shauna and Trico are doing good, and the grandkids are doing good. So, yeah, all is well. We're just getting older. You know, these glasses. These are. I had to go to the eye place to get that. You know, that deep dive test to really see what kind of glasses, because it's the Walgreens ones, man. I don't know. You put on a pair and then they work for about a month, and then you're like, man, these don't. So I think it's just your eyes just get bad. I don't know what it is, but Auntie and I find ourselves talking more about it's just like what we wanted to leave. You know, some people use the word legacy, but it seems like, you know, you get to an age where you see that the end is, you know, and I don't want to. I mean, I don't not trying to be a downer on the show, but I mean, you know, every human being has X amount of years.
Right.
You know, in fact, Josh, I remember when we were touring with Amy Grant. Back in that day, I mean, we were in our 20s, and I told the guys, I said, I'm going to ask Amy if we can talk to her, you know, because it was a long tour. It was a Christmas tour, doing over 20 cities, you know. So one day, I asked Amy. I said, Amy, can my brothers and I come and talk to you? And we just, the idea was just to pick her brain and just, you know, Amy Grant, she's done so many great things for the music industry, and then she's been an actress and very involved in the community. So anyways, she said, yeah, come on. And so we got together with her one day, and we just said, speak to us, Amy. We're a young band, and, you know, any nuggets that you can give us, we'll just gladly receive.
Right.
And she, the thing I remember her saying was, you know, every band or every artist has a window of time, and sometimes artists don't realize that, you know. But when you keep that thought in the back of your mind, I've got a window of time. I think it encourages you to make the best of every moment, you know, and just work hard while you can, you know. So. That's
Awesome.
good to start out with.
Yeah, that's good. I want to start off by talking to you a little bit about something that's been going on for the past couple of weeks now in our country with the revival that started at Asbury, yeah. When you were talking about your community group, that just it made me start thinking about the church. And with this revival that's been going on, I've been thinking about the church a lot, and you know, what is the church, and what's the church's role in our lives.
Sure.
And you know, really when I come down to it, the word that comes to mind is community itself. And you know, I think, especially for my generation, I feel like there's a lot of criticism for the church.
Sure.
People my age, people know just by the numbers that my generation doesn't really go to church, and the numbers are going down. But this revival to me shows that there really is a hunger for people, especially for young people, a hunger for God's presence, and a hunger for God to move in the world today. And I wonder, for people in your generation, when you think about the church, and you've been in the church your whole life, so it's played a lot of roles in your life. I'd like to ask you, like, what is the purpose of the church, and do you feel like the church is meeting that purpose, meeting that the call that it has?
That's a good question, a good topic. And I really haven't seen any of the footage from Asbury, and I don't know what's going on there, but I have heard that the young people at this college are they're experiencing what they're calling revival, which is basically the Spirit of God coming down, and people sense it. They sense it to in their hearts. They sense that there's something out of the ordinary, and the term supernatural, just to me that means something that there's no explanation, there's no logic behind it. It's a God that does things like that to remind people, hey, I'm still here, and so I haven't seen any of what's going on in Asbury, but when I hear about it, man, my heart rejoices, man. I'm like, man, I'm grateful because I have seen moves of God, in different churches, or even like sometimes a network of churches. And if you Google revival, I don't know what will come up with, but I remember big revivals, like probably the last one was in Florida, and it was what they called the laughing revival, because everybody was just like, they would laugh, and they would say, we're laughing in the spirit, like the
Wow, I've never heard of that.
Yeah, it was in Brownsville, Florida.
Wow.
And it went on for months.
Wow.
For months, and but I know that in the history, though, too, of revivals, there's probably a lot to read and study. But growing up, we had revivals all the time at church. When a revival would be announced, that means that we're going to have a series of services. Could be 3 days, it could be a week, But sometimes, like I've heard churches in a week long revival, it was so strong that they would extend it, and it would turn into 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, however long, But let's see. I just think revival. Well, the let me see how I would put this. The effects, I think, or the cause of revival is really God. Is His Spirit. It's the Spirit of God, and I think revival. The purpose of revival is for growth. Just kind of like a garden, or grass that needs to be revived. A lot of times it's not a waste. Sometimes you can just put water on there and boom, the life comes out of it. Right. And so I think that's the purpose of revival. I know my thoughts are kind of all over the place, but
no, you're good.
am I touching touching the question a little bit?
No, you are. I think, well, for someone like me, I think revival is something I've always heard that word growing up, and I kind of had a little idea of what it meant, but I've never been a part of one, or I've definitely never seen anything like what's happening at Asbury, and it's actually spread to other campuses, like my alma mater, Lee University. It made its way there, and
Wow.
so there was a lot of I'm not too connected with the people who are at Lee now, but I do still know a few, and was just hearing things from people who were there, and your nephew, my cousin River, is there as well, and
What have you heard? Just like I said, I just heard like just from my brothers and stuff. There's and then I think I might have seen a few things on the news saying,
Yeah.
but what have you?
Well,
What's going on?
at Lee specifically, this is just the story that I've heard as an alumni is that there was a group of students in a class who they were inspired by what was happening at Asbury, and Lee is a Christian school, so they asked their professor, can we go and pray in the chapel?
Okay.
And the professor said, yeah, we'll finish our class doing that. And so they all went to the chapel and started praying. Wow. And from there it grew to music and singing, and I think there was preaching and prayer, of course. And as from what I know, it was continuous for like 4 or 5 days until the school actually, they ended up like putting it on a schedule. Like, so now I don't know if it's still going on now, but I do know like for like at least 4 days without stopping, there was revival going on at Lee.
Man, that's awesome.
And I think a similar thing, Asbury, which is where it started, I think theirs lasted for like 12 days without stopping or something like that. And
do you remember hearing about this place in Kansas City? They would call it was IHOP.
Yes.
Remember International House of Prayer? Our old guitar player Dave May was
that's
there.
who I know it from.
Yeah. And I think that went on for months too. The move of God there.
Yeah, I think I remember Dave telling me that he basically had shifts where this was years ago, but he was like he would do like 8 hour. He would do like the night shifts, and he was leading worship through the night at the International House of Prayer. But yeah, it's one of those things like growing up in the church. If I'm being honest, sometimes I'm skeptical of things like that.
Totally.
And just because I think I've had experiences where I'm not sure how much of what was happening in the church was from God or from man.
Sure.
And so I don't know. I think there's things in my heart where I'm like, yeah, well, what's really happening? Like who's benefiting from this or things like that. And but I don't want to be callous to the movement of the Holy Spirit. And so it is encouraging to me to see people from my generation hungry for God, man. And people from my generation open to the movement of the Spirit.
Absolutely, especially when you see the numbers of churchgoers of your generation going down.
Yeah.
So then you hear that. To me, Josh, I feel in a way when I hear that the number of church goers are decreasing, I don't feel like I'm as concerned as some people about that, because, and here's the reason why. I feel like we are becoming more aware of the authentic church of God, which doesn't always meet in buildings, doesn't always do the same things that have been going on for years and generations. I mean, I think that traditions are great, but at some point we should step back and ask, what is this? Is this benefiting us? Who is this serving? When I heard about what was going on in Asbury, there was part of me that was excited, but a part of me that was skeptical, like you. But I mean, I'm not. So I don't think I was skeptical about Asbury. I think I'm more like I'm hoping that it would continue to be a move of God,
Yes.
and that men wouldn't step in and go, okay, we're like, man, if we're wanting revival from God, let's not mess it up. And I've been one of the guys that messed things up before too.
Yeah.
But so that's my thoughts on what's going on, and also revival. I can relate to you. Skeptical when I was skeptical because what I would see, Josh, is that at our church growing up, there'd be a revival, people experiencing the presence of God, and then even people like being baptized in the Holy Spirit, start speaking in tongues, all of that. And as a kid, I would see this, but I wouldn't see like behaviors change.
Yeah.
One of the things that was hard growing up in Samoa was, man, just sometimes the form of discipline that to me, it crossed the line, And so I would see like a mom or a dad, like experiencing revival, but then I would see them interact with their kids, and it just didn't. I was like, I don't think, And again, I mean, I was really young, so I developed this just a bad taste in my mouth about, don't tell me about this revival thing, and it's interesting too, Josh. I read a verse in our Zoom prayer this morning. I think it was 1 Corinthians 14:33, something like that. But the scripture says, God is not the author of confusion. So and when I read that, I can think of so many times growing up in the church where I was confused. I was like, oh, what's right, what's wrong? So anyways, I mean, I'm not just judging my past. I'm just wanting to share what I experienced. And then at this point of my life, I'm all for a move of God. I'm all for a revival, and I do feel like when God moves, good things happen.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. When just hearing you talk, it reminded me of a trip that Eli and I went on. I think it was in 2017 or 18. Him and I went to Samoa. Yeah. And it was like 8 days living with Grandpa and Grandma, and Auntie Tivo was there with Kyron, and I felt like I finally got to live out a little bit of the stories that I heard from my dad and my uncles about what their childhood was like, specifically when it came to church, because we went to church every day.
I know.
And that was not something, I say I grew up in the church, but that's not how I grew up. I went on Sundays and, maybe Wednesdays, but
you can still have a life.
Day. Not every day. It was, I enjoyed it because I felt like, man, it was just something new and fresh for me. And it was also special because I got to think a lot about my dad and just what his childhood was like. But I can totally see how there's pros and cons to growing up like that. Totally. Do you, I want to ask you, when you think about your childhood and the role that church played in your life when you were younger, do you look back on that fondly, or do you look back on that like, man, that was stupid, or that's like, how do you remember it?
Man, I do look back at it fondly, but I also look back at it with a lot of regrets. There's some hurts, from the past. But one thing that I realize is that my dad and my mom, man, they did their best, to bring us up in the way of the Lord, because they had mentors, and speaking into their lives, and so they got the whole, and plus Grandpa was a Marine, so he was like, all right, for Marines we have tasks, and we're gonna accomplish those things. Okay, so here's your task: learn 10 scriptures, and then let's be at church 4 or 5 days at night. And so, I think that I could speak on behalf of my brothers. There were a lot of times where we wanted to just do normal things and, like play sports and do other things. But so there are some regrets, but I think it's just that's my story. Yeah, it's a part of my story, and I do want to help whoever I can help that battles any any feelings of sadness or depression because of past dysfunctions. I want to help them, and I love to share how I was able to move on and how I'm able to just look forward, and say, okay, that was the story. well, what now?
Yeah.
What do we do now?
Yeah. I think that's good. I think my experience when I was there with Eli was definitely eye opening to understand. Like, I'll never be able to understand what it was like to be you guys when you were growing up, but just understanding that you know, your lives were different than mine, and your childhoods were different than mine, and so. But I appreciate what Grandpa did for us while we were there, and I could talk to you guys about your childhood for a while. But let me ask you about something different now.
Okay.
You guys are working on a new album, a new record, and I think you were in the studio today, actually. Could you tell me a little bit about what this new album is and where the inspiration for it came from?
Absolutely. We're working on, and we decided on just calling it the hymns, the Katinas, the hymns. There'll be 10 hymns in there. There's a handful of maybe 3 or 4 just classic hymns. It is well, How Great Thou Art. And then there are some more modern hymns. And then there's 3 songs on there that we're calling hymns, but they're original.
Oh, wow.
And Dan Needham, who's producing it, he's I would say a lot more versed, just educated on what a hymn is. What is a hymn? And to me, if it's in the hymnal, that's a hymn.
Right.
So I think this is probably. I'm just gonna guess, like our 17th or 18th record.
Okay.
There might be more than that, but we've never done a hymns record. In our travels, because we do churches mainly, but we've been blessed to do a lot of different denominations. From Calvary to Assembly of God, Baptist, Church of God, but there are some denominations that all they do. Musically, they only do hymns, anyways, I'm excited. You mentioned your school earlier. I'm excited that we're doing. It's actually a medley of songs by Andre Crouch with the voices of Lee. Yeah, and man, that's it's all a cappella. Voices of Lee are amazing. They were on that show, Sing Off with Pentatonics and. So Bradley Knight, he arranged these vocals. Anyways, I think there's 4 or 5 Andre Crouch songs, and so it's special to us because Andre was a mentor of ours, and so we're doing that. But today we're at the studio working on laying some guitars down.
Okay.
I'm really excited. Even the way that we're releasing this record, I'm excited about it because it's new. This will be the first time we do this. I think it's called a waterfall plan.
Yeah.
Were you at that meeting?
I wasn't, but I'm familiar with
Okay,
like a
which
waterfall
basically
release.
does that mean, Josh, just releasing a single at a time until it's a record?
Yeah. So I mean, I think there's more than one way to
Okay.
approach it, but a waterfall release basically it can extend the life of a release and. But it allows you to maybe you guys release one song and let that one breathe and then another song and do that a few times and then you release the rest of the record. I'm not sure how you guys are going to approach it.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. What I'm hearing is just one song a month.
Oh, nice.
Starting in April.
Wow. So it's coming up.
Yeah, it's coming up. Yep. And we're down to just mixing and we had Luke Sullivan come over and lay some guitars just because in the listen down, we just thought, okay, this song needs a little more of this or that. So we're laying down the finishing touches on it and it'll be done.
So from a creative standpoint, what is it that you hear? Like, how do you know when a song needs how do you know when a song needs a guitar or whatever it is? Like maybe guitar is a good example since you just came away from that. But what are you hearing or not hearing that you're like, oh, this song needs something?
Yeah. It's what's the word when it's like it's just everyone's opinion is the subject is, you know what I'm saying? It's just like there's probably a lot of opinions out there on when do you add something that,
Right.
because some people just like more of an open feel, and they're
Sure.
just like, oh no, I just want to hear just the raw stuff, or
Sure.
but it's preference, I guess is a good word. But when we're listening down to a song, Dan and I have been working closely together, and a lot of times I'll go, man, it needs some guitar, and I'm already thinking the same thing. So, but just guitars and instruments, it's just coloring,
Right.
So you have a melody, you have lyrics, but I think it's just keeping in mind your audience, and and so that's how we determine what's needed. If it's an up tempo song, a lot of times it's easier for me to hear like what's missing. The slower song, sometimes it could be a discussion, because some guys are like, man, this sounds good, and then another guy goes, but I think it needs a little
Yeah.
percussion in it, and so it's just that whole thing is just, it's compromise,
Yeah.
and everyone working together, and
Yeah.
yeah.
I think it's important. Music is an art, not a science. So
Yeah.
there's not always necessarily a right answer.
Yeah.
It's more about feel and
Man, I like that. Music is an art and not science.
Yeah.
Man, that's a good one to just chew on, man. You
Yeah.
gotta chew on that, because science is a whole different, that's a whole,
it's
almost
black and white. It's either-
putting formulas together,
Yeah.
and boom, this works here. Yeah.
Music is not like
No,
that.
no.
Yeah, I think one thing that I spend a lot of time struggling myself with is like wondering, does this actually need more stuff or does it need less stuff? Like, what do you think is harder for you? Like knowing when a song is finished, or adding too much? Like, do you feel like you're always adding more and you overdo it, or do you think sometimes you underdo it?
Totally, Josh. Well, I'm new at this. You taught me, how to work my way around logic. And sometimes, and I'm so excited that I look at my watch, and whoa, 3 hours just went by, creating music. And one night, man, I was just like, I felt like, man, I'm on fire, man. I'm laying all this stuff down, and then finally, went to bed, and then woke up the next day and went and played it back. I was like, oh my. So I think it just depends on like your ears. Are your ears fresh, or because I was amazed at that I couldn't hear how busy it was.
Yeah.
The previous night.
Yeah.
Just kept going. But so your question was,
Do you feel like your struggle is, do you overdo things, or do you think you not do enough when it comes to adding different instruments or different layers and things?
man, that's a good question, because I was honored to do Sunday Set 2. I produced most of that. Jordan Sapp produced too, but it's funny when I listen back to that record now. There's some songs where I feel like, okay, that was good. That was good. That was, and then other songs, I feel like, man, I wish I would have put strings on that, or So, but here's the thing: whenever I meet new artists, and they're like, man, I want to record a record, but I'm just waiting for whatever. I usually try to encourage them, just put it out. Do a record, put it out. You're not going to record your best record. So it's a fine line, because you do want to get your ducks lined up,
Right.
before you just dive into a record. But then other times, man, it's just procrastination because of fear. Like, so my thing is, man, I like I want young people to just don't allow fear to keep them from diving in, and don't go for perfection.
Yeah.
Like you said, man, music, it's an art, man.
Yeah.
And it's up for interpretation,
Right.
so.
Yeah, I think, no pun intended, but I think music is a volume game. Like, you got to put stuff out. You just got to keep making stuff.
Yeah.
Keep making stuff because, like, Michael Jackson's first album wasn't Thriller.
Absolutely.
And all the greats, they all started with stuff that maybe was mediocre or even bad. And the classics, no one's first song is a classic, I think. And so you just got to keep making music. And
I think the goal is to, to try to improve, and, learn in the process. And because that's what I saw with Michael Jackson's career, man. It was just like everything he came out with, it was better and better and better. And that, man, that's quite a feat, On the other hand, I've heard some artists, their work gets, in my opinion, it's like, man, that wasn't as good as the last one. Yes.
I think you often hear that when people reach like a certain level of success, they kind of lose that hunger, or you can hear when someone's hungry in their music. And sometimes once you make it, you're not hungry anymore. And it's not really your fault or anything, but there's something missing in the music.
That's really good, man.
Yeah, I don't know. I think for artists that maybe are still at the bottom of the hill climbing their way up, that you should be thankful for that hunger, because it's hard to replace that, and it's a fuel that can help you make amazing music. Let me ask you this, Uncle. Working with a guy like Dan Needham, or I'm not sure who else you guys are working with on this Hymns record, but I know you've worked with a lot of people in the industry. I'll start with Dan. Like, what do you find? What's one thing you've learned from him just working with him about production and music?
Man, so much. Like today, when they were cutting guitars, man, so many times what I was hearing was like amazing, and Dan was like, no, let's can you make it not as crunchy? And I mean, and so I was learning what he was asking for in this particular song that Luke was playing guitars on. I mean, they were taking the time. I mean, it's very tedious, but the end result is it's worth it. It's worth it. So that I guess what I'm learning from Dan is to just spend the necessary time. But we talked earlier about, like, with young people, man, don't worry about it. Just put it out. So I still see that being true, but at the same time, just your art should be your craft. It's a craft that you care for, you care about it, and you're willing to put in the time.
Definitely.
But I love what you were talking about earlier, just the hunger, because I think that you can see that in so many other, industries or, careers. Like when you lose the hunger for something. Well, the example I guess that I'm thinking about is athletes.
Yeah.
We know that some athletes, when they get paid, the A tier guys, when they get those contracts that are like, oh man, you don't have to worry about another penny for the rest of your life. Sometimes they lose their hunger. I saw it happen. I'm not going to name names. But on the other hand, there's guys like LeBron, who spends millions on just his health. And that's why he has the longevity that we're seeing today. It's like unheard of. So that's a good thing to just encourage people to stay hungry, man.
Right. Yeah, I think that's one of those things. I never watched him. Well, I didn't watch him in his prime, but the thing that I hear about Michael Jordan was that his hunger was never satisfied. that competitive fire never went away, even after 3, 4, 5 championships. He still had something
He still had
that
it.
that had him, that was driving him.
Yep. Until I remember his first, because he retired twice. The first retirement speech, he just said he lost the excitement. It wasn't quite as excited about the game anymore. And I mean,
Was this when he left to go play baseball?
yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yep. I don't know. We don't have to talk about this long, but I ended up meeting him. I told you this, huh?
Yeah.
I ended up
Were you at
meeting.
a hotel or something?
Yep, I was working front desk at a hotel, and it was when Michael Jordan was playing baseball in a farm league for one of the teams, and their team came through, and so I got to meet him. The reason why I met him is because I had to take him a message. I came in, and so I got to meet the great Michael Jordan, man. Yeah.
Yeah, I do remember you telling me that story. That's cool. It's funny. So last night, my dad and I and Uncle James and Levi John, we drove to Memphis to watch the Lakers play.
So awesome.
It was kind of a last minute decision. We were like, let's just go. They're here. They're only a few hours away. So we went, and LeBron was not playing. He was out hurt. But it was so strange to me. So, we're not Grizzlies fans, we're Lakers fans, but we're at a Grizzlies game, and maybe 2 or 3 minutes into the game, LeBron comes walking out of the tunnel, and he's just in his street clothes or whatever. And I didn't even realize LeBron was walking out, but I started hearing all these boos. And people booing, and I was like, what's going on? The game's going on, and people are booing. And then I look, and on the baseline, I see LeBron James is walking.
Wow.
And I don't know, I was just thinking, his life is so different from mine. Like, everywhere you go, people have an opinion about you. And I'm sure plenty of times he walks out and people are cheering, but also sometimes he walks out and people are booing.
Part of it,
I can't imagine living life where, like, everyone feels so comfortable telling you what they think about you. I think, but that's LeBron's life, and it has been for 20 years now. I don't know.
No way to escape it, man.
Yeah.
The good comes with the bad, man.
Right.
It comes with all the cheers come with the heckling,
Yeah. I mean, I looked at my dad afterwards. I was like, what did LeBron ever do to Memphis?
Haters, man.
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like these people might hate LeBron and not even really know why. But LeBron just has to deal with that. But we had a lot of fun at the Lakers game. The Lakers lost, but it was a good game, thankfully.
Yeah. Well, I remember not liking LeBron either when he wasn't a Laker.
Yeah.
And then he became a Los Angeles Lakers, and I was like, I want him to do great things.
Did you guys were you guys Michael Jordan fans or haters when he was in Chicago?
I would say that we were haters. But the person, Michael Jordan, who, Air Jordan, Nikes, I just speaking for myself, I admired that. I looked up to that. I was like, wow, that's, because I knew he was a hard worker too. Because people on the team, all of his coaches said nobody works as hard as him. So yeah.
But you guys were still not.
No,
you wanted to see him lose.
Yeah, we didn't. Any uniform that wasn't purple and yellow or gold, then we weren't. We didn't have a lot of thoughts for those teams.
Yeah. Well, Unc, thank you for your time. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to talk to you about before you go.
Okay.
Maybe one more thing about. Did you watch? Or have you listened to Callie's episode from last week yet?
Yep. So I saw maybe 10 minutes of it on YouTube just because I was running an errand, but it looked good. Was it? Did she say something?
Well, she mentioned to me that she's thinking about possibly moving to New York.
Oh, I do remember that. I remember my radar went, what is that? What?
Well, I won't ask you. I'm sure you have your thoughts on that, and I just more wanted to ask you as a father, when you hear or see your children, you know, making big leaps and taking big steps or dreaming big, what and we can finish on this. Like,
Okay.
what are your hopes for your daughters when it comes to their dreams and the risks that they take? Like, what is your hope as a father for your daughters?
Yeah, man. Well, I would say the human part of me just wants to keep them close and be a part of me and Nancy's lives. As close as they can be. That's kind of our heart. But Caitlin and Jervon, they've been away since they've been married. They live out 4 hours from here in Atlanta. But I think I would say that my hope as a dad is just that they flourish. And when I heard you and Callie talking about her going to New York, there is that thing that go, oh man, in my heart going, don't go to New York. I mean, New York, New York. Yeah, that's like saying L.A., man. But as you guys were talking about the busyness of a city, and I could hear this excitement and that's what I hear from any young person that you would talk to about New York. Just how busy it is there, but how there's so much to do there. Besides the theater, the live theaters, there's this the entertainment and just the pace of life is so fast there. And I think as a dad, when I just take a deep breath and go, okay, what would I want for Callie? I would want her to go and pursue her heart's desire. Same thing for Court and Caitlin, and really, for all our nephews and nieces. My heart personally is that when you feel a nudge in your heart or a desire to do something, I think my role would just be to pray that all the pieces come together to see that happen. And the way I like to look at life, Josh, is like in seasons. Life happens in seasons. So if there is a season of Callie going to New York, it's just going to be a season.
Right.
I think I could go if she says I'm going to go for a year or 2 years. I go okay, longer than that. I don't know. But I'm not going to try to circumvent any of my girls' their desires. Once I just accept it, I'm going to support it. The accepting part of it might take a little bit of time. But that's just because of the heartstrings that are attached. Sure. But yeah, I would support them and just be there for them as well as I could.
Yeah. Well, I hope you know this. I'm sure you do. But whenever I talk to your daughters, one thing I know for sure is that they love their parents, and they definitely feel loved and supported by you guys as well. So
thank you, Josh.
Well, Unc, thank you for your time. I appreciate you coming by. I always enjoy having you here, and I'm really excited to hear. I've heard little snippets of the Hymns album, but I know your fingerprints are all over it. I can't wait to hear the rest of it. But thank you.
Man, I gotta say, your dad has a solo.
Does he really?
It's he's singing the whole chorus of Jesus Paid It All.
Oh wow!
Yeah, on this, it's one of the newer hymns, the ones that we wrote, called The Cost of Forgiveness.
He hasn't told me that.
Yeah,
I can't wait to hear that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, all these years, I don't know if I've ever heard my dad sing a solo.
And when you hear your dad,
Yeah.
He has a beautiful. He's when it comes to like the high parts of the harmonies that the Katinas do, it's either going to be your dad or Uncle John. But your dad has this tone that is. It's special. It's special, and you're gonna like it.
I'm excited to hear that. Well, thanks again for being here.
Absolutely. Yep. Thanks, Josh.
To those of you listening, thank you for tuning in. We'll be back with more episodes soon. Have a great day.
Run to your nightmares. Run to the terror. Run
heartbreaks in the air you've been overthinking. Run with the phantoms, run with the ghouls, run with the goblins and goons you've been overthinking. Run with the failures, run with the mess, run with the scars on your chest you've been overthinking. Yeah. Run to your nightmares, run to the terror, run till heartbreaks in the air you've been overthinking. Run to your nightmares, run to the terror, run till heartbreaks in the air you've been overthinking. Run with the phantoms, run with the ghouls, run with the goblins and goons you've been overthinking. Run with the failures, run with the mess, run with the scars on your chest you've been overthinking. Yeah. Run to your nightmares, run to the terror, run till heartbreaks in the air you've been overthinking.